Last night, I attended the UK premiere of Rebel Moon, and today I will give you my full spoiler-free honest thoughts on the movie. Hey everyone, welcome back to the road to Rebel Moon. This is episode 17, and today I get to make the video this web series has all been leading to, the movie review. Last night's premiere was fantastic, a truly incredible experience that I will treasure for the rest of my life, and a big thank you to Netflix UK for inviting me. But don't worry, that invite won't influence my review. My channel is based on my honesty, and that is what you will get. There are things I love, and also some things that I wasn't a fan of. So let's get on with my review. Rebel Moon Part 1: A Child of Fire was easily my most anticipated movie of the year, and this movie mostly lived up to the hype. I knew I was getting an epic movie, but I didn't realize how emotional it would be. Snyder has managed to make me connect to every main character in this movie in their own unique ways. The twists and turns these characters went through felt impactful and were executed really well from actor to director. I haven't built a true emotional connection to any of them other than the main character Cora, but I am sure as we see more of them over hopefully multiple movies, that connection will only get stronger. My favorite character I think is Cora. She is an absolute badass and lives up to her name because she is the core of the movie. Every character is connected through her and she leads the way throughout. My worry was that her fight scenes wouldn't feel too convincing as they were on a lower budget and would use a stunt double throughout, but that completely isn't the case with Cora. Sophia Boutella did almost all of her own stunts and she is incredible at fight choreography. She sold the fight she was in and I was absorbed into every battle. Speaking of the battles, every action set piece was so epic. Snyder really knows how to film action. Those are obviously the highlights of the movie. The action was so cool, and Snyder's stunt choreography team have outdone themselves yet again. However, my favorite aspect of every battle was the effects the gunshots had. They felt so powerful. In Star Wars, blasters are obviously dangerous, but they don't have much power to them. But with Rebel Moon, every gun from a pistol to a machine gun feels powerful, and the slow motion really helped sell the weight and power of these guns in this universe, and the sound design was phenomenal. Actually, the sound design throughout the film was phenomenal too. The closest thing I can compare it to are the Transformers movie sound designs. If you appreciate those sound effects like I do, then you are in for a treat with Rebel Moon. Now, sticking with the sound, let's talk about the score. Composed by Tom Holkenborg, also known as Junkie XL. Rebel Moon's score was a mix between Mad Max Fury Road and the Snyder Cut, just like I predicted. A few pieces felt like I had heard similar versions of them in other Junkie XL movies, but overall you heard a clear identity for Rebel Moon's score. It had tender moments for the more gentle emotional scenes, but really ramped it up appropriately for the most epic moments. Like I mentioned earlier, the emotional side of the film surprised me. We hadn't really seen it too much in the trailers, and you don't normally think of that as one of the biggest parts of a Snyder movie, but it's quite prominent in A Child of Fire. Snyder was able to take his time developing these characters in the way he wants to, and that's a real advantage to creating this film in its own universe. Rebel Moon being its own IP and not connected to another franchise means he is the gatekeeper of how characters are shown and no one else is. He doesn't have to abide by guidelines, so we see what Snyder wants us to see for these characters, which allows him to build the emotional scenes the way he wants them to be. There's no worry of comic accuracy or specific moments that Snyder has to use to link it to the core of those characters. Snyder is the only one who truly knows these characters, so we see what we need to see, which is a real aid to Snyder introducing us to these characters. Moving on to the CGI, for the most part, and I mean the most part, the CGI is solid or incredible. It has about 2 or 3 weak shots that feel out of place, but the rest are really strong. I think why it's so great to give a director like Snyder a smaller budget is because he knows how to get the most out of what he has. The movie has a lot of soft focus, meaning the edges of objects in focus are slightly blurred or perceived as smooth, and the rest out of focus have an even softer feel to them. Now, that can be seen as a negative if you want that super crisp look. However, I think with an $80 million budget and the style Snyder was going for, the soft focus really works. It firstly gives this movie its own style and its own texture and its own identity, but it also means that CGI in the background or is out of focus naturally has more of a blur to it, as there is less focus on it, which means there's less pressure on getting super crisp CGI shots on a lower budget. So any weaker shots are less noticeable due to the way Snyder shot it. What really helped the CGI too was the mix of practical sets and CGI. For example, the village of Velt felt real because it was real. There was no feeling of CGI used because it wasn't used, which meant when the CGI ships arrived, they felt real too because they were landing on a real set. And the overall look of Rebel Moon is beautiful. This is one of Snyder's most visually stunning films. Snyder now has proved that he is a great cinematographer as well as a great director. We all know Snyder loves his slow motion, and this movie does have its fair share, but if you're like me, then you love slow motion so it doesn't bother you. I remember on a number of occasions there were some seriously epic slow motion shots. It really worked best in the biggest action set pieces, as it allowed me to track what was going on and really absorb into the scene. I just love how Rebel Moon looks, and I love Snyder's slow motion. I think he is the best in the business at it. Michael Bay is probably the closest to Snyder, but Snyder's visual style just lifts it above anyone else. The sound design within the slow motion shots also adds to the enjoyment of the slow motion. I could watch the gunshots in slow motion on repeat. I just loved those shots the most. Another thing I love from Rebel Moon is the tone. Finally, a truly serious sci-fi movie that feels like a rarity in the modern era of blockbuster filmmaking. You feel the fear the characters have and the danger they are in. No jokes being forced in or overused. Humor is there, but only subtly, and it was very rare, which made it so much better to see. There's one scene in particular that I love so much because it does something that has been missing so much from modern blockbusters. I won't spoil it, but there's a scene where something impactful is being said, and the score rises and it becomes this really powerful moment. Now, in most modern blockbusters, before that scene is over, the director would shove in a cheap joke to tear down that moment in an attempt to humorously subvert the viewer. But fortunately, Rebel Moon doesn't do that. It sticks with the powerful moment, and it feels so much more rewarding to see that. I didn't feel robbed of that powerful moment. I felt rewarded for feeling the character's words and feeling motivated myself. I also want to talk about Admiral Noble, played by Ed Skrein. I was expecting a ruthless villain, and wow, we got one. When we first saw him, I felt on edge. I didn't feel comfortable seeing him interacting with other characters, as he was unpredictable and actually very scary. Snyder wrote this villain very well, and I want to see a lot more of him in the future. I would love to watch a series on how he became an admiral, because I think that's a storyline that has a very fascinating path. But let's move on to the story. For the most part, you could see what the story was going to do. The trailers sold that very well. However, there was a lot I didn't expect. There were some incredible twists that blew my mind, and I didn't see them coming at all. I also love how deep the history is. There is so much we still don't know, but there's a strong feeling of history throughout the film. It leaves you wanting to know more, and the fact we are getting prequel comics and hopefully spin-off shows telling those stories really excites me. One of my only issues with A Child of Fire's story was that the ending didn't feel satisfying. Obviously though, it's part 1 and Snyder has stated it ends on a cliffhanger, setting up part 2. So it's meant to not feel truly satisfying. It's meant to make you feel like you want to see more. You want to know what happens next, and at the end of the movie, I felt like that. So it actually did its job. So the negative with the story is that it makes me want to see more, which is actually a real compliment to the storytelling. My only negative with the film really is that the third act felt a little clunky. Act 1 and 2 flowed really well, and so did the first half of Act 3. However, the second half of the act felt like it was trying trying to wrap things up, but it didn't feel like a natural flow. It felt like Snyder was trying to conclude where everything is before getting to part 2, but it just didn't flow as smoothly as the rest of the movie. There was one scene where it felt like it was meant to be the final scene of the movie, but then another scene happened which was actually the final scene. The best thing I can compare it to is the epilogue of the Snyder Cut. That film for me should have just ended with Superman opening his shirt and showing the S to the screen. And then the scenes after should have been an end credit scene setting up a future, but allowing the Snyder Cut to end in a satisfying way, with Superman being the final shot before the credits. And I had that same feeling with A Child of Fire too. The final scene for me should have been an end credit scene, as it feels like it's just an add-on to what actually felt like a satisfying ending, if that makes sense. But other than that, I had a blast with this film. I think anyone watching this movie will have a really fun time at the very least. It's an action-packed movie on face value, but has some very deep moments too. So if you take the time to really focus on those scenes, you get a lot more out of it. The movie's done its job. It's entertained me a lot, and it has made me want more. A lot more. Not just part 2, but the prequel comics, the spin-off shows, and absolutely anything else this universe has to offer. I seriously believe that this universe has so much potential. All I ask of Netflix is to give Snyder a bigger budget for the third movie when it comes, not if it comes, but when it comes, because I think this will definitely happen. A bigger budget would just allow Snyder to have more money for CGI, which would clean up a few shots and allow him to increase the scale of the sets and the overall movie. I really hope Netflix continue to trust Zack Snyder, because part 1 has proved that he knows what he is doing, and I think Rebel Moon will be a major success for the studio. I can't wait to see the movie again on December 15th at the cinema, and then on December 21st on Netflix, as it has been pushed up a day. So overall, I would give Rebel Moon A Child of Fire an 8 out of 10. To sum it up in 3 words, I'd have to say beautiful, epic, and emotional. The reason it isn't any higher is due to the ending not being as strong as it could have been, and I felt like I wanted to know more about the characters, but I didn't get enough of that in this film. Other than that, I loved it. So I hope you enjoyed my review today. If you have seen Rebel Moon, let me know what you thought of the movie, and if you haven't, make sure to let me know in the comments below if you are excited for Rebel Moon. But that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I hope to see you here again soon, so until then, have a great day. Bye!